The old gods are a religion that the children of the forest and the first men believed in Westeros. Now, as you are thinking of the old gods, I would like you to consider the real world religion of Buddhism, in which they have multiple gods. I also want you to think of the Greek and Norse mythology, in which they have multiple gods, and each god is a god of a particular thing. So you have a god of love, a god of war, a god of arguments, a god of mothers, a god of fathers, a god of homeless people. It can be everything. I want you to think of the Westerosi culture of the old gods, believing that there is a god for every single thing that there could possibly be. In saying that, of course, the only real way to communicate with these gods would be through going to a weirwood tree, which, of course, before the Andals' invasion, were all over the entirety of Westeros. And then once Aegon the Conqueror swooped in and conquered 6 of the 7 kingdoms, he tried to bring in his new religion. But the North stayed steadfast in their belief of the old gods and refused to succumb to this new religion. Which means that everything south of the North region in Westeros have no longer got their godswoods or their weirwood trees, which of course have a face carved into them. And if you wish to communicate with the gods, you would go in front of this weirwood tree in the godswood and pray to them. Now, throughout my reading of the Song of Ice and Fire book series and watching the first 4 full series and only watching some of the 5th series so far, I have been able to create an idea of what this religion would have been like. Now, within this video, what I'm going to be talking to you about is the fact that I will be talking to you about the main 3 points of this religion, which is a child's naming, a wedding, and a funeral within the religion of the old gods. And throughout this video, I will also be describing and showing you what particular types of meals may be created or may be cooked to honour a particular god or particular region that the old gods inhabit. So first, the naming. The namings of a child would happen in the Godswood in front of a weirwood tree. And majority of the time this, of course, would either happen in the local lord's castle or in the local city or local town that you lived in, and you'd go to the communal weirwood tree. And as the father and mother and the child would come to the weirwood tree, with the mother holding the child, the father would say, "I," name of the father and of the house that he comes from, "do come with the name of the baby and house the child is from." And the mother would say, "I, the mother, and the name of her house, come and bring the name of her child and the name of the house that child comes from, to be presented to the gods." And then the mother puts the child onto the ground, lays it just in the roots of the weirwood tree, and then the father says, "I do this now so the gods will know the name of the baby and the house that it comes from this day until their last." And then the father picks up the baby and the mother picks up a bowl, which consisting of, in that bowl, is a scoop of honey, oak tree bark, and a spoonful of red wine. The mother puts her thumb into this bowl and makes a W on their baby's forehead. Once this has been done, she passes the baby, she gets given the baby from the father, and the father takes the bowl, and the father does the same. And he says, "I mark you, the name of the baby, with the care and love of your father and mother." A wedding would happen in the Godswood, in front of a weirwood tree, in front of the local lord and a congregation of friends and family of both the bride and groom. As the bride walks up the aisle, her groom steps in front of the lord, who is standing in front of the weirwood tree, and the lord would say, "Who comes before the gods this day or night?" And because the bride is being escorted up the aisle, the bride's escort says the name of the bride, the house from which she comes from, comes here to be wed. A woman grown, she comes to beg the blessings of the gods. And then they say, "Who comes to claim her?" and then the groom will say his name and the house that he comes from, and then he says who gives her, and then the bride's escort says their name, the name of the house that he comes from, and his link or relationship to the bride. And then the Lord will say, name of the bride, do you take this man? And then the bride will say, I do take this man. And then the Lord says, name of the groom and the house he is from, will you care, love, and honour the name of the bride? Then the groom says, I, the name of the groom, and the house he is from, will care, love, and honour the name of the bride. And then the Lord says, I, name of the Lord, the house that he is from, and any of his other titles, do give this woman to this man in the eyes of the gods. And they are married. A funeral. Now, just before I start, to say that there are two different types of funerals within the religion of the old gods. The first is for the poor, and this funeral would be like this. The funeral will start off in the God's Wood in front of the weirwood tree. Either the wife or eldest son or closest friend of the deceased will say, I, their name, the house they come from, lay this man or woman's body in front of you all. They, the name of the deceased and their house that they come from, and a little bit about them, explaining what sort of person they were, what they might have done in their lives, and a few good points about them. Once this has been done, the body is carried by a few people to a funeral pile, and just before the funeral pile is set alight, the congregation, friends and families of the deceased, is asked if they would like to say anything about the deceased. Once the people have had their chance to speak, the person who started off the service sets the funeral pile alight and stands as it takes hold and burns the body. Once the fire has gone out and the body has been burnt, it is gathered into a wooden box, and then a few days later their families and friends regather usually at the family's cottage or farm, and the person that started the funeral service, after digging a small hole big enough for the box to fit in, says, "We leave this body for the ground for the name of the deceased, the name of their house. This is where they once lived. This is where their journey had ended. This is where their new journey begins." And once this has happened, the box is placed in the ground and earth is to cover it. Now, the second type of funeral is for the lords of the area. And this usually takes place in the castle Godswood, in front of its weirwood tree, and the heir of the lord stands and says, "I, the name of the heir and the house that they are from, lays their mother or father in front of you all, their parents' name and the house that they came from, all of their titles, explaining who their parents were, who their siblings were, who they were married to, and who were their children, explaining to them all that the deceased lord or lady was a good and honest person and respected by all of their followers in their areas of being a lord or lady." Then they are given chance to explain in full detail what sort of person the deceased was, and how it is a great loss that they have now died, but how their heirs wish to carry on their work. Once this has been done, 4 people carry the deceased's body all the way from the weirwood in the Godswood to the crypts underneath the castle of the Lord. As they walk down the stairs, it is silent. Once they get into the crypts, we walk to where there is a space, and a casket is left open, and the body is placed within the casket. And as this is done, the heir says, "I," their name and the house they are from, "do this day lay my parent," the deceased's name and the family they came from, "to this ground, and allow it to be honoured and respected by all who come now and forevermore, and to understand the great noble acts that they have done. For their journeys have now ended upon this land, and to us we see them no more, but a new journey has begun. And as this is said, a heavy stone effigy that has been carved is placed over the top of the casket, this showing a fully formed likeness of the deceased. Now, in the religion of the old gods, there is no really religious days or particular days for particular gods. All it is really on the anniversary of your name day, you will hold a feast if you are a lord or you are rich and you have respect or honour within your community. If you are not so, then of course it's usually just your family and close friends that will get together and wish you well for the year ahead. Also, just generally throughout the year, you might celebrate the changings of the seasons. So when winter finally leaves and the spring season starts, you would celebrate by maybe praising the gods and maybe even making some kind of sacrifice of a winter lamb or a winter sheep or some goat or maybe even a cattle and maybe even a wild animal, just so the gods know that you are thankful. Same thing when it goes from spring to summer, and maybe the same when it comes to autumn to winter. And then you may even have particular days in your family history that are of a particular historical fact for you, particular historical interest, and if that is true, then you may have a celebration then. Like I say, it's very much left to your own ideas within the old gods, within this religion, because really the most important things in life within the old gods and the old religion is your naming, the day of your wedding from which you leave your family and join another family and hopefully begin a new family as well, and then the day of your death and of the day of your funeral, and you would be leaving this earth and you will be going and joining the gods and carrying on a new celebration. Hello everybody, so thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. Just so you know, I own nothing to do with any of these subjects that we have discussed in this video. A lot of it is made up by myself or used other religious concepts from the real world, such as Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, and all other types of religion, to come up with the ideas that I have formed for this video. I've also used a lot from the books of the series of Ice and Fire and the television series of HBO's Game of Thrones. The only bit that I do own is the maps that you have seen during this video. And if you like these videos, please leave a comment or subscribe, and I am sure I will be making more of them because they have been great fun. I hope you have enjoyed it once again, and I shall see you next time.